What's up, everybody? It is Saturday, October 28th. This is the Daily Fantasy Show brought to you by DFO. I'm rocking a sweet retro Marvin Jones Jets jersey for the two people who are Jets fans. We have a solid slate tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I can count 11 games tonight. Got some nice contests on DraftKings, nice $40. Pretty sure it's replicated in some form or another on FanDuel. So probably should just get right to it. If you have questions during the show, if you joined while I'm recording live, ask away. I'll try to get to them as I can. But let's do it. First game of the night, we have the LA Kings traveling to Boston to face the Bruins. I did get a question about Adrian Kempe earlier today. I think he's in play for sure for season long, at least until Jeff Carter comes back, as long as he sticks on the second line. And I also think he is in play tonight in DFS. Tuukka Rask is back from a concussion. He hasn't played, I believe, in over a week. For me, it's always a wait and see for Tuukka Rask. There's so many options tonight, and I'm not sure you really need to dig that deep to go to LA too, but they are cheap. They're $13,000, a little over $13,000 a stack. They're probably, obviously they're not going to be near my top stack because they're a secondary line and they're facing a decent team on the road. But if you need the salary, Kempe's been hot. He's been playing really good. He's with Toffoli, who I love, even though he should be seeing more time on ice. But he doesn't. And Tanner Pearson. You want to use either Muzzin or Alec Martinez with them. If you want to use Kopitar as a one-off, I'm cool with that. Again, Dustin Brown is still, I think he's coming back down to earth a little bit, and he's still really expensive. He's $5,800, yeah. To me, that's a fade for me. I do like Kempe. Again, he's $4,400. He's been playing good. It lets you free up some salary if you want to fit in one of the more expensive stacks like Tampa Bay, Edmonton, Toronto, like teams like that. Jonathan Quick at $7,900. He is coming off a 40 save shutout. I think he's gonna get ownership just because of that recency bias. He's been playing good. The Kings are 8-1-1. I'm not sure. And you want to go ahead. This game can end up being a defensive battle, because the Bergeron line is going to be up against the Kopitar line, so that's probably going to cancel each other out. They're two of the best two-way defensive centers in the league. Although, I do like both second lines in this game. I think Pasternak is in a good spot. He is $6,900. The top line as a whole for the Kings isn't that great defensively anymore. Kopitar is carrying that line. So, I guess Boston one's in play. It's not one of my favorite plays. I generally avoid lines going up against Bergeron or Kopitar or even to a lesser extent like Barkov and good defensive centers like that. Because Boston 1 is expensive. They're almost $19,000 to stack on DraftKings, and they're in a tough defensive matchup. I think there are much better ways to spend your almost $19,000 tonight. But they're middle of the road for me. If you're in on Boston, I won't talk you off it. I don't think I'm going to have too much exposure tonight. I think Charlie McAvoy is the preferred play in the blue line there. Torrey Krug is still struggling. He's $4,700. McAvoy's 4,400. You can go there. You know, middle of the road. Again, Tuukka Rask, 7,300. He's cheap. He's coming off a concussion. He has been known to, even if it's not his fault, you know, defensive lapses. He's given up, you know, a couple goals here and there. If you want to use him in the GPP, okay. I'm not going to touch him in cash. I want to wait and see how he responds to the concussion. See if he's really, truly, fully healthy. He did pass concussion protocol, but I'm going to wait and see. So let's move on to the second game of the night. We have the Flyers traveling to Toronto to face the Maple Leafs. Let's load that game up here. All right. Here we are. I think the top line of the Flyers is in play tonight. Couturier, Voracek, and Giroux. Toronto's been struggling defensively. I saw on Twitter, I forget who it was, and I'm sorry that I'm not giving you credit, but Freddie Anderson has a low danger save percentage of 0.941, which if he held that up over the course of the season would be the lowest save percentage on low danger scoring chances in history, I think, for a goalie. So he's been struggling low danger, which is concerning. So that definitely firmly puts Philadelphia 1 in play. You know, they're still shooting a high percentage, but Voracek is leading the league in assists. He finally got on the scoreboard, or got a goal the other night. Couturier has been playing really well on that line. I think Giroux is rejuvenated by being on the wing. He has less defensive responsibility. And the line's fairly expensive, but again, it's not overly expensive. You don't have to get crazy to fill out your lineup. If you can fit Ghost at 5,800, that is the preferred option. Provorov at 45 is on the top pair at Ghost, so they might, you know, they're probably going to see a good amount of even strength time with that line. Provorov, I believe, is on power play too, so it doesn't correlate there. But if you can't fit in Ghost, you know, Provorov's not a bad option. Gudis at 3,200, he blocks a bunch of shots, takes a bunch of dumb penalties. He's Radko Gudis. You want to punt him, that's cool. Who's in net tonight for them? No one is confirmed. Brian Elliott is 7,100. They're both Flyers goalies are 7,100, and to me, I don't really have too much interest because I can see this being a very high-scoring game. The Hurricanes put up 6 goals the other night on the Maple Leafs. So if you want to take a flyer on them in GPP, okay, cash, no thank you. On the Toronto side, I don't, you know, if you want to use Freddie, you think he's going to bounce back. He's always someone who's going to see a ton of shots because the blue line for Toronto is still very suspect. They play a very high-paced game, very loose defensively. He sees a ton of shots. Obviously, always for me, if I'm throwing salary to the wind, Matthews and Nylander and Hyman are the preferred play. I believe Marner is still on the fourth line and sees power play 2 minutes, which is crazy. But here we are. My preferred play would be the Matthews. Again, Matthews, Nylander, Hyman. You want to use Kadri, Marlowe, and Komarov. That's cool too. Like any of the 3 lines, the top 3 lines, and even Marner is a one-off because he sees power play times in play. That's one of the reasons I struggle with using the Maple Leafs, because I want to use everybody. And the Matthews line is always expensive, but that is my preferred play. Again, on the blue line, Riley is also my preferred play, 5,300. He's getting up there in price. You want to use Gardner at 4,100. Okay, if you're using, you know, the second or third lines, Zaitsev is in play, 3,800. I can get behind that. And again, one thing I didn't mention about Philly Philadelphia is the secondary or the second line of Fippola and Simmons. You want to use them because of the power play prowess. I'm cool with that too. This should be a very open game, and I don't mind that. Again, both goalies to me, GPP only. I have less interest in the Flyers goalie. I have a little bit more interest in Freddie, just based off shot volume alone and the fact that eventually he's going to correct his low danger scoring chance save percentage. He's going to bounce back, and maybe it could be tonight. Marner up with Bozak and Marlowe today. JVR is out. I missed that. Brock bringing the news. So Marner is back up with Bozak. That definitely puts that line firmly in play. Thank you, Brock. The man behind DFO makes this all happen. So yes, Brock got all the names mixed up, but that definitely firmly puts the JVR is out. Whew, here we go. So Bozak, Marner, that line definitely in play now. Hopefully this gives Marner a nice kick in the tail, and he starts playing and stays up there. I think that is a great line. It's cheap. It lets you get in the more expensive stacks, which is nice. So maybe if you're watching, you're not going to miss that news. Or if you check out DFO, you're not going to miss that news. But maybe, people who are just going to blindly set their lineups because it's Saturday, they want to go out drinking and grilling or do whatever they do on a Saturday night. They can miss it, and that line could be, as a whole, pretty low owned. So I think that is a really nice spot. So again, thank you, Brock, for that. Let's move on to the third game of the night. We have a barn burner here, some original six matchup. My New York Rangers traveling to Montreal to face the Canadiens. Pavlik against Price. Ay. What do we do here? Pavlik's in net for the Rangers because AV thought it'd be the right thing to do. Again, I don't really mind it because Montreal's been a house of horrors for Hank. He hasn't been very good this season. And also, Pavlik's only had 2 starts this season. Hank is 35 years old, so it makes sense to give him some rest. Maybe he bounces back nicely. But because Pavlik's in net, I think that puts Montreal in play. Drouin, Pacioretty, Weber, always in play. I like Gallagher. He's still cheap. He always gives the Rangers fits. I think you can play him in cash. You can play him in GPPs as a one-off. It just depends because, a couple games ago you saw Montreal just scoring bunches. Scored 5 goals, and then the next night they get crushed. So you don't know which Montreal team is going to show up, but leave it to the Rangers to bring the best out of Montreal. So I think they're a good play tonight. Drouin is 5,500. That's reasonable. Pacioretty's 5,600. That's reasonable. Weber Bombs is 5,600. I mean, those 3 together, you can easily get in other things. The Rangers are just not very good defensively since they broke up McDonough and Shattenkirk early in the season, which was a mistake. Having Nick Holden in the lineup is a mistake. Mark Stahl skating in cement. So yeah, those guys for the Montreal Canadiens are definitely in play. Arturi Lehkonen, 4,300 is in play. I have not seen the Rangers lines, and I wish Pavel Buchnevich would move up. He's only 4,000. AV played him the least amount of time 5-on-5 at even strength than any other Rangers skater, including Boo Nieves, who did have 3 assists. But come on, Pavel Buch should be in the top 6. I don't know who you'd send down, but if the lines are still together, it's going to be Mika Zibanejad, Rick Nash, JT Miller, and then Davy Desharnais with Zook and Kreider. Third line is Hayes, Fost, and Vesey. And the fourth line who crushed souls the other night was Nieves, Grabner, and Buchnevich. For me, I'm not really sure you need to go to the Rangers tonight. You want to, okay. Eventually, the top line for the Rangers is going to break out. I don't know if it's tonight. They notoriously struggle in Montreal. If you want to, BVP, batter versus pitcher, that I don't really buy into that. But New York Rangers 1 is the middle of the road for me. You want a cheap line, use the Hayes line. I think they've been the best line so far this season. They're cheap. Again, you don't really have to go there. It's middle of the road. For me, I'm also a Rangers homer, so take that with a grain of salt. I try not to play favorites. But they are extremely cheap. They're like $10,000. You can fit in a bunch of studs if you want. I think, Carey Price is going to bounce back and have a good game just because it's the Rangers. He's up to 7,700, which is a little pricey considering how he's been this season. The 2 times I've rostered him at 7,300, it's been an utter disaster. Now he's a little bit more expensive. You want to use him in GPPs. I think he's in play. I think I would avoid him in cash until he can prove he can beat Carey Price again. So yay Rangers. Let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Anaheim Ducks traveling to Tampa Bay to face the Lightning. Listen, I think I'm beating an old drum here, but Tampa Bay 1, matchup proof. They're getting up there in price. Stamkos 7,700, Kucherov up to 8,300. He is by far, or not by far, but he is the most expensive player on the board tonight. Nemestikov is up to 5,400, so that line as a whole, if I can actually do math in my head, they're a little over 21,000 to full stack, which is really expensive. You'd have to use a secondary line or a cheaper top line to get 2 lines in there. If you want to use Hedman, that makes it even more difficult. It's definitely still possible. He's 6,100. Sergachev is even up there at 4,200. You can use him. I know he's on power play 2. I also I'm not really sure who matches up with who here, but I believe that the second line, the point line, is going to get the Getzlaf line, which makes Anaheim 1 firmly in play. But when we get to the second line of Tampa first, which is Point, Palat, and Gordy, Yanni Gord or Yanni Gordy, whatever it is. Maybe it's a silent E. I'm just awful at pronunciation. But I think they're in play as a secondary line. Anaheim, even though they are getting healthier, they lost Cam Fowler, who's their best defender. They did get Lindholm back. I think you can use, Tampa 2 for a little salary relief. But if they are going to be matched up against the Getzlaf line, I definitely want Anaheim 1. Vasi at 8,000, always in play. Gibson, 7,200 is an interesting play. You can make a case in GPPs. I'd avoid that in cash. But again, top line, Getzlaf, Raquel. That line definitely in play for me. Even the second line, even if they match up with the Stamkos line, they're not overly scary defensively. Vermeet, Silfverberg, and Cogliano. I think you can use them as a secondary option. But my preferred would be Getzlaf, Raquel. On the blue line, Montour, definitely still the play there, 4,300. It's hard to, peg Ducks defensemen after that. They're kind of all over the place. You want to use Lindholm at 3,500, okay. You want to use Manson, 3,300, okay. That Vatanen at 4,100. I don't know if he's back. I'd wait and see on him. So Montour is the preferred play there. So again, Tampa 1, matchup proof. They're not my favorite play tonight just because they're so expensive, but you've seen what they've done all year. Stamkos and Kucherov have 11 straight multi-point games. Is it a multi-point games or 11-point game streak? Either way, it's ridiculous. They're always in play. I think there are a couple better options from a salary perspective, but again, if you want to put them in, I will definitely not talk you off of it. And again, for the Ducks, the top line is firmly in play as one of my favorite plays tonight. I think they might go overlooked since they're on the road, and Vasilevsky's been very good. So yeah, let's move on to another game I think people are going to target, at least one-sided. Detroit Red Wings traveling to Florida to face the Panthers. We got Reimer in net against Detroit. Has not been confirmed yet. It's either going to be Howard or Mrazek. Probably Jimmy Howard. You know my feelings on Detroit. I don't think they're very good at all. That firmly puts the top line of Florida into play. I think the last time they played, if you actually six-man stack the Florida Panthers, you won all the money. The top line is my preferred option and probably my top play of the night, which is Barkov, Huberdeau, and Dadonov. They're not overly expensive. They're only $17,000 and change, which is nice. It lets you fit in a more expensive second stack than usual. On the blue line, you want to use Yandel, 4,600, Ekblad, 4,500. Those are the preferred plays. And I also think Florida 2 is in play tonight. I really like them as well as a nice secondary line, especially if you're going to use like Tampa 1. Florida 2 is only a little over 14,000 to full stack. I think you can make it work that way, which is Vinny Trocheck, Radim Verbata, who's coming off a hat trick, and Nick Bjugstad, who is cheap at 3,700. I like that line as a whole, especially if you're going to use the more expensive lines. I think that's a nice way to get exposure to the Panthers without getting overly chalky. I think Trocheck will have some ownership, but that line as a whole will not. Looks like Anthony Siu is back for Detroit. He is on the second line with Mantha and Larkin. If you're not going to use Reimer, I think that is a nice option. As Florida gives up a bunch of points. They're only 14,200. That's a nice secondary stack. Again, I'm not too high on Detroit. My preferred play would be Florida in this game. But that line as a whole, they're young, they're fast. They'll probably create chances. You want to use Detroit 1. They're a little bit more expensive. Zetterberg. Barkov will probably be up against Zetterberg tonight, so I prefer to use Larkin, that line, if you're going to go to Detroit for some salary relief. Again, middle of the road for me for Detroit, but it's a nice way to get the expensive lines in. In net, I do like Reimer and GPP tonight. He's 7,500. You can even make a case in cash because I'm not overly excited about Detroit. I like Reimer. I think he's top 5 GPP goalie tonight. Especially if you're going to use the Panthers, I think you got to lock Reimer in. Again, it just if you're going to do the normal or the generic build of 4-3-1, 4 from one team, 3 from another, and a one-off defenseman, the highest ceiling correlated would be using the goalie from the 4 or 3 stack. You don't always have to do it. Like I know like the chances of scoring the highest are there. It's just something to think about strategy-wise if you like to stack that way. Again, I know there's some people in the industry who like to auto-lock the goalie of the 4 stack, and I understand it from a ceiling perspective. I'm not on that team where you have to auto lock it in, but I think if you're going to use the Panthers, I think Reimer is definitely a good option to go with that. So let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Arizona Coyotes traveling to New Jersey to face the Devils. The Devils are on a back-to-back. They beat the Senators in a shootout last night, coming off their bye. Ooh. So, in net for the Devils, it's either going to be Kincaid on a back-to-back, who's 8,100, which is ridiculous, or Scott Wedgwood, who's 6,500. That's how backups used to be priced on DK. You don't see that too often anymore, where there's a 1,600 variation between goalies. So either way here, I think that firmly puts Arizona 1 in play. Either you're going to get a tired Kincaid, who isn't a starting goaltender in this league. Oh, Wedgwood just got traded to... See, this is why I should prepare when I get home. I took notes earlier this morning, and then I had to run out. But Brock just told me that Wedgwood got traded to Arizona. Schneider could be activated and start. So interesting. That doesn't really change much for me. I think it still puts Arizona firmly in play. Schneider coming off the IR. I always like to target goalies coming off injuries, especially because, in-game rust, they probably haven't been on the ice too much. If it's Kincaid on a back-to-back, he's not a starting goaltender in this league. So that still puts Derek Stepan, Max Domi, and Clayton Keller, who's amazing. He's 18. If you've never seen him play, he's electric. He's going to definitely be in the running for Rookie of the Year. He's awesome to watch. So if you've never seen him play, it's a lot of fun watching him play. That line is definitely in play for me. Again, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, 4,400. I know he hasn't been great, but when he is at his best, he is usually priced around 6,500. I still think that's a steal, and he's on Power Play 1. Jason Demers, 3,300 on Power Play 2. I think you can go there. You want to use the second line for Arizona as insane salary relief if you're trying to jam in 4 studs. You want to put in Stamkos, Kucherov, McDavid, and Draisaitl, and you need some cheap options. I think Arizona 2 lets you do that for sure. They are super cheap. Dvorak is 3,300. Duclair's 3,600. Tobias Reeder's 3,300. Perlini 3,200. They're just so cheap, and I think they're in a decent spot. I mean, I wouldn't expect 3 full line goals there, but if you're trying to jam studs into your lineup, I think that is a really good spot to save a lot of salary. Domingue is Luis Domingue. Whew. I know the Devils are on a back-to-back. They're not on the road, though. They're still at home, and they're coming off the bye week, and they're young. So I do like New Jersey 1 tonight and New Jersey 2. I think New Jersey 1 is obviously going to be my preferred play. Nico Hischier, Taylor Hall, and Drew Stafford. They were buzzing last night. They didn't really get on the score sheet too much. It was a bunch of the third line. Jimmy Hayes had a good game, but I think New Jersey 1 is definitely in play for me. You want to use the second line with Henrique. That's cool. He's on the top power play with Jesper Bratt. If Palmieri's still out, I think that's in play as well. And Johansson is also on the power play. On the blue line, if you want to, go after Will Butcher, who's also on the top power play, he's getting a little pricey at 4,300. Severson scored his first goal since last November. Last night he's 3,400. And John Moore's an interesting punt for me. He's 2,900. He saw 25 minutes of ice time yesterday. I don't expect him to play 25 minutes again, but if he gets close to 20 minutes on the ice, 2,900, I think that is a very good punt option. And again, Kincaid, if he starts, no interest for me at 8,100. If it is Schneider off the IR at 8,300, it's also a pass for me. I prefer Arizona in this game. And again, I don't want to spend 8,300 for a goalie coming off I think it was a groin injury. That worries me a little bit. So let's move on to the next game of the night. Two teams on a back-to-back. We got the Columbus Blue Jackets traveling to St. Louis to face the Blues. Both teams won 2-1 last night. You saw that Tortorella mixed up his lines. It was Foligno, Panarin, and Josh Anderson on the top line. The second line was Dubinsky, Jenner, and Atkinson. I'm not like if we've gone over this before. With me, strategy wise, especially on a big slate, I don't like using teams on the back to back on the road. I think it's a risky proposition, but if you want to use either of the top two lines for Columbus because you think they're gonna crush it, okay. I think they're in a decent spot. I think Jake Allen's going to be in that tonight. I like him more than I like using Columbus. Columbus struggled last night. They took so many penalties. Tortorella probably ripped them a new one all night. They could possibly change lines because of it, but I would count on the lines that I just said. Again, if you're going to use Columbus, my preferred play is the top line. I'm not thrilled about it just because I don't like to target back-to-back on the road. On the Blues side, definitely like the top line tonight, even though they're on a back-to-back. They are expensive, but Shen, Tarasenko, and Jaden Schwartz, there we go, is in play tonight. It's probably either going to be Bob on a back-to-back or Korpisalo, Joonas Korpisalo. Either way, I think if you are going to use the Blues on a back-to-back, it's definitely going to be the Tarasenko line. They're going to avoid the top defensive matchup from Columbus. You want to use Pietro on the blue line if you can fit him. Okay, Colton Parayko definitely isn't a bad consolation prize. Let me see something real quick. Not too high on the second line. They are cheap, but I think there are better spots to use that kind of salary. Stastny, who, I'm not a huge fan of Stastny because he doesn't shoot the puck a lot. Steen also doesn't shoot the puck a lot. And Vladimir Sobotka. But they're not too high on my list. They're a little over 15,000. I think there are definitely better spots. For secondary options, Steen and Stastny do see power play time. Again, if you want to use them because of that, okay. They're better paired with Parayko, who is 4,200. He's still really cheap. Pietrangelo is up near 7,000, which is really expensive. If you're not using Columbus, I think Jake Allen is a nice spot for GPPs. I probably avoid either Bob on a back-to-back or Korpisalo. If Korpisalo is starting and you want to use him, he's going to be fresh. Blues are on the back-to-back. I think you can make a case in the GPP I would avoid in cash. So we're moving on to the next game of the night. We have the New York Islanders traveling to Nashville to face the Predators. Nashville is on a back-to-back. They played Chicago last night. They won 2-1. Now they are home. The Islanders are awful defensively, especially on the road. That puts the Nashville top line in play for me. They're also one of my favorite plays tonight. Ryan Johansson, Philip Forsberg, Victor Arvidsson. Forsberg is 7,000. RV is 6,100. You know, that line's fairly expensive, a little over 18,000. Johansson provides salary relief 5,300. He's also a guy who doesn't shoot the puck too much, but he does. All three of those guys are on the power play. Roman Josi at 6,200 if you could fit him as the preferred play. PK Subban's down in price to 5,700. I like him. Samuel Girard, who came back last game, is 3,300. I think he is definitely a viable punt. Matthias Ekholm sees a nice amount of time on the ice if you want to go there. Not a huge fan of the second line for Nashville. You want to use Kevin Fiala as a one-off, okay. He is on power play too, and he's cheap. Other than that, you know, on a back-to-back, I think, you know, you got to, with teams on the back-to-back, you got to stick to their big guns. Now, on the Islanders side, even though they are poor defensively, I do like the top line tonight. Just got to make sure they're still together. Doug Waite, I think, mixed it up last game, in-game. But if it's Tavares, Eberle, Lee, I think that's in play as well, especially if, you know, you're getting Rene on a back-to-back, or Juicy Saros, who hasn't been very good this season, although he's one of my favorite goalie prospects. Now, an interesting play for me is New York Islanders 2. Matt Barzal, 3,800. He's just been all over the ice. I really like him tonight. He definitely provides salary relief. Eberle's on the second line. Okay, so Bailey's on the top line, so it's going to be Eberle, Barzal, Eberle, and Beauvillier. So that doesn't really change too much for me. I like Bailey on the top line. He's much cheaper than Eberle. He's 1,100 cheaper. That actually makes me like the second line even more. I do like the top line the same. The second line definitely provides some salary relief. Barzal's 3,800. Yeah, Bailey's also on the top power play, so that is awesome. They're all together on the power play. Second line's really cheap as well. It's always interesting to use Islander defenders because you never know what's coming from. Again, Leddy and Boychuk are the preferred plays. If Pulak is going to see some power play time, he's got a freaking cannon of a shot at 3,400. Pellick, 3,200, had a big game the other night. You can go there. Calvin DeHaan, not huge on them. Mayfield, again, under 3,000 if you really need the salary. He had a goal the other night. In net, it's going to be Halak at 7,200. I think you can take a chance on him on a GPP since Nashville's on a back-to-back. Again, if it's Pekka Rinne for Nashville, 7,700. He's a little older, traveling back from Chicago. I know it's a really short flight, but still, if it's Saros at 7,500, I think you could make a case in the GPP. He has been struggling. Well, I'm losing my voice from talking so much. One second, let me take a sip of my liter of cola here. I don't have a glass. Yeah, Saros is projected to start, but you never know until warm-ups with Lavalette. I think you can make a case for him in GPP. He does have the ability to shut down a game. The thing that worries me, he is very short. And if his positioning is poor at all, he's going to give up a ton of goals. And that's kind of how it's been this season. His positioning in net hasn't been great. So my preferred, I prefer to use the Islanders over Saros. But if you want to use Saros, I'm not thrilled about it. But in the GPP, and it wasn't in play. Again, Halak at his price is in play. So let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Pittsburgh Penguins traveling to Minnesota to face the Wild. Excuse me. It's going to be Devin Dubnyk against More than likely, Matt Murray. I don't think this is a great spot to start Casey DeSmith. Dubnyk at 7,300 is interesting. I almost never use Pittsburgh, which is always dangerous. Actually, it's kind of a crazy play, Dubnyk. I don't know if you need to go there tonight. The Koivu line is definitely going to be matched up against the Crosby line, which makes my preferred play the Malkin line. Malkin, Kessel, and Rust. Malkin and Kessel are on the power play together. If you can fit in Letang, that's the way to go. I'm not saying like the Crosby line's not in play, because Crosby is Sidney Crosby, one of the best players in the NHL. I just, with them facing the Koivu line, I'd much prefer using the Malkin line. And on the flip side, because of that, I think Minnesota 1 is in play for me. The Crosby line isn't great defensively. Koivu, Zucker, and Granlund, they're fast. They create a ton of chances. Pittsburgh is not good defensively. I think the top line's definitely in play. You want to use Eric Stahl. You want to get funky and use Eric Stahl and Chris Stewart. You're going to see some lower ownership there. I don't think you really need to go there, but you can, especially in a GPP. You're going to get them extremely low owned. You want to use Suter, 5,200. Cool. Spurgeon, 4,500. That's really about it for me on the blue line. Again, if you're not using Pittsburgh and you want to get a little crazy, you can use Dubnyk. This game is going to be pretty high-paced, you would think. It's going to be a lot of back and forth, lots of shots. Dubnyk is a scary option, but he is cheap. So he would definitely be a GPP flyer for me. If it's Matt Murray, I think he's in play just because after the top line of Minnesota and really Eric Stahl and Stewart, you want to call him a threat, you call him a threat. But I think Matt Murray's in play, especially in a GPP, unless for some reason it's Casey DeSmith, which I doubt, but I would have no interest in him. Let's move on to the second to last game of the night. We have the Blackhawks traveling to Colorado to face the Avalanche. Chicago, Nino is a game time decision. Is he really, if he plays interest? That's interesting because Niederreiter apparently was targeting Tuesday to come back, but if he is back tonight, let me see. Let me just take a peek at his price here. 4,800. Depends where he slots in. As long as he's in the top 6, I think you're going to get him extremely owned because on DK he still has the red DL next to him. And by the time he's announced in, most people on a weekend have already set their lineups. So yeah, from a ownership perspective, I think you can firmly put him in play. Yeah, definitely an ownership play. More than likely, he won't be back until Tuesday. You never know what Boudreau is going to do, but this is a good spot for him. Yeah, pair him with Stahl and Kuhn. Yeah, if he's there and it gets announced late, you're going to get him at 1-2%. I definitely think that's a nice way to get some leverage in a big GPP. So Chicago's on a back-to-back against the Avs. Chicago's on the road. Normally, I wouldn't, again, use back-to-back on the road teams, but they are facing the Avalanche, who have been... Oh, Avalanche are also on a back-to-back, too. They got curb-stomped by the Vegas Golden Knights, 7-0 yesterday. So, holy crap, this game is a dumpster fire. I think the top 6 for Chicago is definitely in play. I like the top line just because DeBrincat provides some salary relief. They also put up 40 shots on goal yesterday. I think Rene just had a really good game. I would assume it's Anton Forsberg, who's 7,700 for the Blackhawks. That's interesting for me just because I hate using teams back-to-back on the road, but Colorado's on a back-to-back. Looks like they've already mailed it in, so I think Forsberg's definitely in play in GPPs. You want to get a little saucy and use them in cash. Okay. But definitely in a GPP. This game is just ugly. Whether it's Varlamov or Bernier, top 6 for Chicago's in play. Don't really have too much interest in Colorado. You want to use Duchesne and Landeskog as a mini. Go ahead. I don't think you have to go there. I don't think you need to go there. But, they're cheap. Duchesne is 4,600. Landeskog is 4,300. I think there's better spots to save salary. But you want to use them if you want to use them because Chicago's on a back-to-back. They have Forsberg in net. You can do it in a GPP. I'm cool with that. I have no interest in either Colorado goalie tonight. I just, looks like they're going to just crash and burn for the rest. It's Bernier tonight? Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. Varlamov did take one for the team. So Bernier is definitely going to be in net tonight. I don't have much interest there. You want to take a flyer on GPP if you're feeling, you're on the Avs tonight. You're big Avs, yeah, they're going to bounce back. Woo! Bernier, okay. But other than that, I really don't have too much interest. So let's move on to the last game of the night, which is interesting. It's the only 10 p.m. game. This is an interesting spot for me. We got the Capitals traveling to Edmonton to face the Oilers. Looks like Jacob Vrana is skating with Backstrom and Oshie, which is an interesting line for me. I like that line a lot. Also love the top line for the Oilers. I think they are going to be one of my favorite plays tonight. And they're the late game. And there's a ton of other options. And people don't like picking on Washington for whatever reason. So I think maybe they're going to be lower owned, especially because McDavid's 8,100. Draisaitl is 7,100. And Big Rig, Pat fucking Maroon is 4,700. I like him as a hockey player, not as a person. If you want to hear that story, get a premium membership at DFO and ask me about it in chat. But yeah, Edmonton is definitely one of my favorite plays tonight. They're a little under 20,000 to full stack. Hope he got lit up by the Vancouver Canucks. What? That's just hope he's back in net at 7,400. I think by default he's going to get ownership just because of his price and people, it's Holtby. But holy crap, are the Capitals' blue line awful. They are so bad defensively right now. They have so many issues. They're missing Matt Niskanen so bad right now. Not that he's going to be a huge boost when he comes back, but they're so bad defensively. I love this top line tonight. McDavid, Draisaitl, Maroon. If you can fit in Clefbaum, do it. Darnell Nurse, 3,400. Do it. Definitely in play for me. If it is actually Backstrom, Vrana, and Oshie, that's definitely my preferred play. You want to use Ovechkin as a one-off. Okay. You want to use him with Kuznetsov as a mini. Also cool with that. Secondary lines in this game. I do like Edmonton too. I do like them as well. They're super cheap. They allow you to get more expensive lines in. I think they're in play if you're going to use them, which is Nugent Hopkins, Lucic. I don't know if it's Strome or I think Yamamoto's still a scratch. But either way, that second line's in play for me. I think you can pair him with Nurse, save a ton of salary, fit in some expensive options. I think Cam Talbot is a decent GPP option at 7,500. especially if you're going to use the Oilers. I think he's going to be fairly low owned as well. So that about wraps up the 11-game slate. I have talked for 50 minutes by myself. That is longer than all the speeches I gave in college combined. I didn't last very long in college. But make sure to check out Daily Faceoff for goalie confirms, line combinations. We have awesome premium stuff. The optimizer is great. You got to check that out. They got one for cash specific. We got one for GPPs. We have projections by Emmanuel Perry, the guy behind Corsica Hockey, or Corsica, however you pronounce it, which is awesome. You got AD's line matching article. You get premium chat with myself and AD. Brock is always updating the Facebook page, or not the Facebook page, the Twitter handle on the website. He's up to the minute on everything, which is awesome. So make sure to check that out. I'll be in chat tonight from 5:45 to 6:45 taking your questions. If you didn't get a question in here, hop in the chat. You can always find me on Twitter at JRH002DFS. So hopefully you guys win a ton of money tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.